I'm going to continue in French. I'm very honored to be here with you today to speak to you about Asia Bibi. She's a 42-year-old wife and mother. She's Pakistani, and she has been locked up in prison for the past 3 years. She's on death row awaiting hanging. And she is in isolation. Her crime is that she drank a cup of water from a well. Now, this seems incredible to us, but that is the nightmare that Asia Bibi and her family has been experiencing for the past 3 years. So we will project ourselves into Pakistan in the Punjabi province, and Asia Bibi's life is shattered on June 14th, 2009. She goes to gather berries with other women. She's the only Christian woman, and it's stiflingly hot, 45 degrees centigrade in the shade, and the work is exhausting. And she decides to take a cup of water from the common well, and then another. And that's when the other women say that she has soiled the water because she's Christian. And the other women reply, the other women continue by saying that she has now made the water impure, and because of her they won't be able to drink the water. And she responded without wanting to provoke them. She had worked with a couple of Muslims, and she had shared their cups, and she wasn't aware of the hue and cry this would elicit. She said, "I don't think that the Prophet Muhammad shares your view." And now the other women accuse her of having spoken on behalf of the Muhammad, and that she has committed blasphemy, and that the only way for her to get out of that situation would be to convert to Islam. And she responded, "I respect Islam and Muhammad, but I believe in Jesus Christ and I don't want to convert to Islam." And then the women went to see the mullah of the village, who immediately filed suit against her with the district head for blasphemy. And in Pakistan, being accused of blasphemy is a death sentence, because if the courts don't kill you, then the people in the street will. And she was then put in a prison cell an hour away from Lahore. So today she's the only woman in Pakistan who's been sentenced to death. And this death sentence took place 1 year after she was thrown into prison. Her lawyer fled, afraid of being put to death as well. But the date of her trial has not been set by the High Court. And until then, she could be assassinated at any moment or die of exhaustion, because her conditions of detention are very harsh. 5,000 euros have been offered to whomever would kill her, and therefore her life is in danger every minute that passes. So we should try and imagine her conditions of detention. They are truly atrocious. She lives in a microscopic-sized cell where she can touch the walls by stretching out her arms. There's no window. She sees no day or night. She cannot go outside and take a walk. So she's become stiffened. She can't talk to anyone. She's bullied by the wardens because they insult her, because, of course, the wardens are Muslim. She attends to her call of nature in her own cell on the floor. She eats only the food that her husband brings her every week so that she won't be poisoned. She's suffocating from the heat most of the time. Her cell is like a tomb, infested with insects and vermin. Her case has shed light on this law of blasphemy that has brought thousands of women and people to prison. And we should point out that Muslims are the first victims. It so happens that Asia Bibi is Christian, but Muslims also suffer from this law. This law is ruthless It allows people to settle scores with their neighbors. In her case, the villagers wanted to respond to an insult because she stood up to them. In Pakistan, these Christians are second-class citizens, and they have to keep a very low profile. Now, since the war in Afghanistan in 2001, they are suspected of supporting the West because they have the same religion. And in Pakistan, one's religion is one's identity. The accusations against the so-called blasphemers are increasingly absurd. And the crowds are encouraged to take justice into their own hands. A Muslim doctor was accused of blasphemy and thrown into prison after having written on a visiting card with the first name Mohammed written on it. But in Pakistan, 99% of Muslim citizens are called Mohammed. So what can you say to civil society in Pakistan who wonders how blasphemy can be evoked every time you tear a page of the newspaper that has the name Mohammed? Now, statistics are not kept carefully, and it's true that the government does not make a great effort to help us to have an idea of the number of people who have been thrown into prison under blasphemy. But we can say that since 1986, there are 456 Ahmadis have been accused of blasphemy. They are a Muslim sect. They're considered a sect. They're made up of 132 Christians, 21 Hindus, and 452 others are Muslim. So the tragedy that she is going through is not the conflict of one religion against another, but of a law that flouts the basic liberties of its citizens. The law of blasphemy dates back to 1885. The English had inscribed it in the Indian Constitution, but during partition with India, the founder and the first president of Pakistan, Muhammad al-Jinnah, withdrew it from the constitution so that Pakistan become a secular state. But when the dictatorship in 86 came to power, the law was hauled out and put in the constitution, and General Zia al-Yuk introduced it because he wanted to ratchet up the punishment against to defend Islam against any offense. And today the law of blasphemy has become the worst instrument of repression that exists, and it is an arm that is used by Pakistani Islamists. Now, officially, Pakistan is secular. All the religious parties, with the exception of the Muslim League of Nawaz Sharif, say that they are in favor of religious neutrality. And the current president, Asif Ali Zardari, who is universally who was elected, also has asked for religious tolerance. But although Pakistan may appear to be democratic and secular, in actual fact, it's the fundamentalists who have taken power as hostage. And we saw this very clearly in January of 2011. Pakistani politicians were aware of the iniquity and of the injustice of this law, and they tried to abolish it. And Deputy Sherry Remen spoke up in the assembly, but the parliamentarians backed down under religious pressure. And they went to the streets and said that there would be demonstrations if the law was amended. And there are two leaders, very important leaders, who have been killed for taking Asia Bibi's defense. One was Muslim, the other was Christian. Salman Taseer was the Muslim governor of Punjab, and fanatics did not forgive him for supporting Asia Bibi in prison and have said publicly that blasphemy was not doing a service for Islam. And he was shot to death on January 4th and became a national hero that very day. And Shahbaz Bhatti was the Christian minister of the minorities, and he fought to amend the law and supported Asia Bibi, and he was killed in his car 1 year ago by the Pakistani Taliban. Oscar Wilde said, "When right is not might, it is evil." Insofar as the Pakistani politicians remain silent, then their ideology will be equated to terror. But we know that the Islam that they are defending is very far away from the true precepts of this great religion. In the Quran, it says that whoever kills an innocent person kills humanity as a whole, and whosoever saves a life saves humanity as a whole. Asia Bibi is innocent. The Pakistani government knows it, but it does nothing for fear of reprisal. By refusing to act and to impose reforms, the Pakistani government becomes an accomplice of the fundamentalists. In Pakistan in 2012 ratified an international pact on civil and political rights. And this international commitment is not compatible with the maintenance of the crime of blasphemy in the Pakistani law. Since last June, Asia Bibi came out with a book called Blasphemy, where she talks about her experience, and she tells us about her experience in her cell, and gives us a very poignant reading without any hate towards Muslims or Islam. She is illiterate, but she wrote this book with her voice, and I was her scriptwriter. I was privileged to hear about what happened and see what has been going on through the world as a result. We have wanted to save lives of hundreds of other victims of this law. I spent the last 3 years living in Pakistan. I was a correspondent for French television. And the first time I heard anyone speak of her, it was the day after she had been sentenced to death. And I carried out a number of reports on television with my friend Shabazz Bati, who was still alive at the time, and who helped me meet with the family, who was under his protection at the time. But the reports don't have the same impact that a book can have. And if this book exists today, it's thanks to Philippe Robinet, who is here with us today. Because from Paris, he was touched by this tragedy and contacted me in Pakistan to ask if he published a book, if that would help her cause. So very quickly, with Asia Bibi and her family, we concluded that yes, her case could not be any worse, as she was in isolation and there was absolute indifference to her fate, and that only a book that could be published would be able to shed light on what was happening to her and give greater information about the law of blasphemy. Unfortunately, it was never able to meet Asia Bibi directly because the Pakistani authorities, despite my requests, refused to let me see her because they did not want her story to go beyond the borders of Pakistan, because it reflects a very deleterious picture of the country. But I didn't let myself be cowed by this. I wanted to hear her voice, and so I did through her husband, who was allowed to visit her once a week. And so every week, I asked her questions of her husband, who asked them of Asia Bibi. And now she doesn't feel she's as alone. And I hope that the international community will respond. In Pakistan, no one dares to speak about the law on blasphemy, but we can. She has become, despite herself, a symbol. She has not asked to be in the limelight. This wife and mother has become a cause célèbre, and she's being used to maintain the law of blasphemy. Her children are also living in danger. They have to change their shelter regularly. They have to hide. They're suffering from the absence of their mother. And they can't go to school anymore. And the youngest is only 9. Thanks to this book, which allows them to receive copyright, the family is now able to put food on their plate. And one of her children, who is handicapped, can now have medical treatment that is very costly. Pakistan is a great nation. The inhabitants are very warm and welcoming, and they practice a moderate form of Islam. I have been witness to this. Out of the 80 million people, there are only a small number of terrorists and fundamentalists, but they have changed the country. They've left their mark on it. And I've come to you here to tell you about the civil society in the country that is unable to express itself without endangering their lives. And if we manage to free Asia Bibi, we will be able then to help other people who have also been unjustly endangered by this law. Now, we must all try to bring about this dream of saving her life. Thank you.